Welcome to this deep dive. We're really diving deep into the secret door to success.
Yeah.
And like we always say, we pick these books, these sources, because you're interested in self-improvement. You're seeking new perspectives on how to unlock your own potential. And I think Florence Scovel Shinn, she's got some really interesting, maybe unexpected, kind of out of left field perspectives on this. And she uses these really fascinating biblical metaphors to kind of reveal these, these sort of practical steps towards living a more successful and abundant life.
Yeah, and I think what's really fascinating about Shinn is that she has a very specific viewpoint when it comes to success, and I think it's one that's very different from what we hear a lot of times today.
Yeah.
She doesn't see success as something that is, about luck or chance. For her, it's really about understanding and aligning yourself with these universal laws that govern really all of creation, and she sees these laws as being woven throughout these biblical stories.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're waiting to be deciphered.
So it's almost like she's saying, we've had the instructions all along, we just haven't been reading them properly.
Precisely, yeah. It's like we've been misinterpreting, we've been looking at the surface level of these stories, but she's saying there's this deeper meaning.
Okay.
There's this wisdom embedded within them.
So give me an example, what's a specific example of how she uses a biblical story to kind of illustrate this?
Well, take for instance the story of the walls of Jericho.
Okay.
I mean, most people when they hear that story, they think about it as a literal battle, right? With armies and trumpets.
Right.
But Shinn, she sees it as a metaphor for the self-imposed barriers that we erect in our own lives, these walls that we build that prevent us from achieving our goals.
Yeah.
So she's asking, what are your Jericho walls? What are those doubts, those fears, those limiting beliefs that are holding you back? And she suggests that instead of trying to break down these walls through brute force, through sheer willpower, it's actually our focused intention. It's our unwavering faith, like the Israelites' trumpets. It's that energy that can actually dismantle these internal obstacles.
So our thoughts are powerful enough to break down metaphorical walls? That's a bold claim.
It is, and it's a claim that she backs up throughout her work. She really emphasizes this idea that our thoughts and our words have this creative energy, that they're not just passive things happening in our heads, but they actually have the power to shape our reality, to attract experiences that mirror them.
Okay.
And I think, we've all had those experiences where, if we're constantly dwelling on negativity,
oh, absolutely,
it seems to attract more of it into our lives.
Totally, yeah, it's like a domino effect.
Exactly.
But then how do we flip that script then? If it's so easy to kind of get caught in that cycle of negativity, how do we go from attracting lack to attracting abundance?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Shinn, she suggests that it starts with becoming acutely aware of our thought patterns. What are the things that we're habitually thinking about? If we're constantly focusing on what we lack, on what's wrong, on what we don't have, guess what? We're going to attract more of that.
Right.
But if we can shift that focus, if we can start to cultivate a sense of gratitude for what we already have, for the good that is present in our lives, however small it may seem,
okay,
that's when we start to become magnets for more positive experiences. It's not about ignoring the challenges or pretending that everything is perfect, because it's not, but it's about choosing where we direct our energy.
That makes sense. It's not about toxic positivity.
Exactly.
It's about acknowledging where we're at.
Exactly.
Except then choosing to focus on, okay, what is working?
Yes.
What am I grateful for?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that makes sense, but, life isn't always sunshine and roses.
Right.
So when we hit those rough patches, when we feel like we're being asked to make bricks without straw, as she says.
Right.
How do we apply those principles then?
That's such a powerful metaphor, isn't it? That she draws from the book of Exodus. Because it really illustrates that feeling of inadequacy that we all face when we're confronting these seemingly impossible situations. We look at our resources, we look at our skills, our finances, our connections, and we think, I can't possibly achieve this with what I have.
Right.
But Shinn's point is that we often limit ourselves by relying solely on those tangible resources,
Okay.
We forget about these intangible resources that we have at our disposal, our faith, our belief in a power beyond ourselves, our unwavering optimism. These are the things that she argues are so often overlooked, but they're absolutely essential for overcoming those obstacles.
So when we're in those moments, those brick-making moments, it's about tapping into that deeper well of inner strength.
Yes.
And faith. Yeah, it's about trusting that we have that capacity within us to overcome those challenges, even if we don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
So if we don't have all the resources readily available.
Exactly. It's not about having all the answers right now, but it's about that trust. And it's not just blind faith either.
Okay.
Because Shinn is a big advocate for what she calls active faith.
Active faith. Okay, so what's that? What does that look like?
So it's not enough to simply wish for a better reality. We have to act as if it's already here.
Okay, give me an example. How does one act as if when it comes to, like, achieving a goal?
Sure. Think about the parable of the wise and foolish virgins.
Okay.
The wise virgins, they didn't just hope to be prepared for the bridegroom's arrival. They brought extra oil for their lamps.
Right.
They took action. In the same way, actively preparing for your goals even before they feel attainable. Even before you see all the pieces falling into place. It's like showing the universe that you're serious about receiving them. It's about aligning your actions with your desires, demonstrating your belief in their manifestation.
So, okay, if I want to write a book, like, active faith means that I don't just sit around and dream about writing a book, but I maybe start outlining chapters.
Yeah.
I start researching publishers. I've set up a writing schedule.
Yes.
Even though I don't have a finished manuscript, it's about taking those tangible steps.
Exactly.
Even if they're small.
Yes, because it's sending a clear message to the universe. Hey, I'm ready to receive this, and I'm actively preparing for its arrival. And this principle applies whether your goal is, to get a promotion, find a new home, or even, improve a relationship. What's a small, tangible step that you can take today,
Right.
towards that goal?
Right. It's interesting you say, sending a message to the universe, because Shinn, she uses the word God a lot.
Right.
Which makes sense, reflecting her own, spiritual background.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone who might not, resonate with that language, with that religious language, how else can we understand this concept of a higher power working in our favor?
That's a great point, and it's something that I think is important to address, because while Shinn's language is very much rooted in her own personal beliefs, the principles themselves, I think, are universal.
Okay.
So whether you connect with the word God, or you prefer to say universe, source energy, or even just the power of your own subconscious mind, the core idea remains the same. That there's an intelligence beyond our limited understanding that is constantly working to support our growth and guide us towards our highest good.
It's that whole idea of, leap and the net will appear.
Yeah.
It takes that leap of faith to take those first steps towards our goals, trusting that we will be supported, even if we can't see that entire path laid out before us.
Exactly. And this is where Shinn emphasizes the crucial role of intuition. That inner voice that is so often drowned out by, logic and doubt.
Right.
She considers it a direct line to that higher wisdom. And she really urges us to listen to trust those gut feelings, even when they seem illogical.
It's like sometimes you just get that feeling
Yeah.
about a decision, even if you can't quite explain it rationally.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I so drawn to this? Or why does this feel,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds like what you're saying is, Shinn would say, pay attention to that. That's trying to guide you.
Absolutely. Don't dismiss it. Don't brush it aside. Pay attention to it.
But isn't that risky, though? How do we know? How do we differentiate between, fear-based doubts and, genuine intuition?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like we're navigating this path towards success, and we've got faith as our compass, intuition as our guide, but how do we know if we're on the right track? How do we quiet those nagging doubts, that can kind of creep in, especially when things get tough?
Well, Shinn addresses this directly with another biblical story, the Israelites' exodus from Egypt.
Okay.
Now, most people see it as a historical event, but Shinn, she sees it as this powerful metaphor for our own journeys of personal growth.
Okay.
She's saying that just like the Israelites had to flee Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
we all have our internal Egyptians, so to speak.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So these are those, those limiting beliefs, those negative thought patterns that keep us feeling stuck, discouraged, those voices that tell us we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough to achieve our dreams.
Oh, I know those voices. They're very convincing.
Oh, they are, aren't they? But Shinn, she reminds us that those voices, they don't define us. We have the power to choose whether we listen to them or not.
So how do we turn down the volume on those voices?
Well, that's where her emphasis on releasing negative emotions becomes crucial.
Okay, so it's not just enough to think positive thoughts. We have to actively Get rid of the negative ones too.
Exactly. It's like weeding a garden, right? You can't just plant new seeds. You have to pull out the weeds that are choking the growth of those new seeds. And one of the most powerful weed killers that Shinn suggests is forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Okay, so like forgiving ourselves for past mistakes.
Yes. And also forgiving others who may have wronged us.
Okay, yeah.
You know, she tells this really compelling story about a pianist whose career just totally plummeted after a manager took advantage of her. And she held on to this resentment for years, and it completely blocked her creativity, right? It wasn't until she made the conscious decision to forgive him that her creative energy returned. Wow. And her career flourished once more. You see, holding on to anger, resentment, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
That's a good way to put it. It's about recognizing that those negative emotions, while they're understandable, they're ultimately holding us back from experiencing the fullness of our own potential.
Exactly. And that forgiveness, it needs to be directed inward as well.
Okay, so what does that mean? What does it mean to, like, forgive ourselves?
It's about recognizing that we all make mistakes. We're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
You know, we can be so hard on ourselves, replaying past mistakes, berating ourselves for perceived failures. Shinn, she encourages self-compassion.
Okay.
You know, treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a loved one.
That's hard. It's easier said than done, but yeah.
It is. But it's such an important part of the process.
So we're forgiving ourselves, releasing resentment, choosing to focus on gratitude for what we do have. But then what about those times when we just feel like we're wandering in the wilderness, you know?
Yes.
Unsure of which way to turn.
This is where Shinn's concept of the rivers in the desert comes in. You know, she uses this image of the Israelites wandering in the desert and finding water in these unexpected places.
Right, yeah.
To illustrate that even when we're surrounded by challenges, even when it feels like we're completely lost, there's always this source of sustenance, of support available to us if we know where to look.
Okay, so it's about trusting that even when we feel lost, alone, like we're, wandering in the desert, that there's still that higher power guiding us,
Yes.
towards our good, even if we don't see the path clearly. But how do we access those rivers, when we're surrounded by what feels like a barren desert?
This is where the expectancy comes in.
Okay, expectancy.
Shinn, she uses this phrase, according to your faith, be it unto you.
Right.
It's about shifting our mindset from one of lack and scarcity to one of abundance and possibility.
So it's like that whole thing, like whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the power of our beliefs to shape our experiences.
Okay.
And, she gives this great example of this woman who wanted to sell an ermine wrap.
An ermine wrap.
Ermine wrap. And she wanted to sell it for $1,000, but, she didn't really know how it was going to happen. She just kept affirming that it would be sold to the right person for the right price. And lo and behold,
What happened?
she ran into a friend who just happened to be looking for an ermine wrap and bought it from her for that exact amount.
Wow.
Coincidence? Shinn would say no. This was the law of expectancy in action. The woman's unwavering faith, coupled with her willingness to take inspired action, she actually listened to her intuition that day and took a taxi even though she was short on cash.
Wow.
Right. It aligned her with her desired outcome.
It's like when you're putting it out there that you need something, and then all of a sudden it just appears.
It's almost like magic, but it's not magic, right? It's about recognizing that we're not merely these passive recipients of fate, but we're active participants in the unfolding of our own lives. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our beliefs, and then most importantly, our actions. And when we consciously align those with our desired reality, we become co-creators with the universe.
So it's not about like forcing things to go our way, but it's about like surrendering to that power greater than ourselves.
Yes, surrendering, trusting. Shinn, she often uses this phrase, let go and let God, which I think beautifully encapsulates this balance between surrender and action.
Okay.
It's about releasing that need to control every little detail and trusting that the universe will orchestrate events in our favor when we align ourselves with our good. But that alignment, it requires effort on our part. It's about digging our ditches, so to speak, doing the inner work, clearing out those negative beliefs, cultivating faith, expectancy, and then taking inspired action when those opportunities arise.
So we're planting the seeds of our desires.
Yes.
through our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions. And then we have to trust that like the universe is like a master gardener, and it's going to provide like the nourishment and support needed for those seeds to grow. But what about when those seeds don't seem to be sprouting? Like, what about those times when we're doing all the right things? We're affirming our good, we're taking action, we're cultivating gratitude, and yet we're still facing setbacks, we're still experiencing delays. What do we do then? It can be so frustrating though, can't it?
You can.
When you feel like you're doing everything right.
Yes.
And you're still not seeing those results.
Right, and this is where Shinn's emphasis on patience and trust comes in. She reminds us that the universe operates on its own timeline.
Okay.
And just because we don't see immediate results doesn't mean that our desires aren't being fulfilled. It's like planting a seed in the ground, right?
Right.
We don't dig it up every day to see if it sprouted, do we?
Right.
No. We trust that with the right conditions, with nourishment, with time, it will grow.
So it's about trusting that process even when it's unfolding maybe differently than we envisioned it,
Yes, absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that we become passive observers, right? We still have to tend to our gardens.
Exactly. And part of that nurturing involves recognizing and celebrating our successes, no matter how small they may seem.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because every win, every milestone,
yes,
no matter how insignificant it might seem, it's still evidence that we're on the right track.
Exactly. It's like we've done it before and we can do it again.
Right, exactly. So she's saying, remember those times when you faced a challenge, you overcame it, or you achieved a goal, or just, you experienced like an unexpected blessing.
Yes, because every success, it builds on the one before it. It's like it creates momentum.
Like we're training our brains to look for more of that,
Exactly.
To look for more evidence of abundance, which then, of course, attracts more abundance.
Exactly. It's like this positive feedback loop.
Right.
A virtuous cycle of success and abundance.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, and I love how Shinn, she doesn't just leave us with these like abstract concepts, She provides these really tangible tools and techniques that we can use to kind of like navigate those challenges, to cultivate that sense of faith and expectancy in our lives.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the most important takeaways from her work is that we're not alone in this journey. That there's this power greater than ourselves that's constantly working to support our growth, guide us towards our highest good.
It's that sense of like, we've got backup,
Yes, we have backup, we are supported, we are loved, and we are capable of achieving incredible things.
I love that. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Florence Scovel Shinn's The Secret Door to Success, think about what resonated with you. What are you going to take with you? How are you going to apply these principles to create that life of abundance, of purpose, of joy? And remember, you have the power.
You do.
So go out there and make it happen. Until next time, keep diving deep.